The red warning lights flashed across the bridge of the Zephyrian warship Stellar Dominance. Commander Vextalon stood with his forearms crossed behind his back, watching the tactical screen with cold yellow eyes. His thick, scaled skin reflected the harsh light as he studied the data. "Sir, we have a problem," said his second officer, Ketmorin. The younger Zephyrian's voice carried worry. "The scanners show an unauthorized settlement on the planet's surface." Vextalon moved closer to the display. The planet Kepler-4 for it to be spun. Slowly below them, its green and blue surface looking peaceful from space. But the orbital bombardment was already planned. The Hegemony Council wanted this world cleared of rebels within the next 6 hours. "What kind of settlement?" Vextalon asked. "Looks like humans, sir. 847 life signs. 3 small cities. They appear to have been farming there for many years." The commander's eyes narrowed. Humans were still new to galactic politics. Most Zephyrians thought of them as weak creatures who talked too much and fought too little. They had joined the galactic community only 300 years ago. "Are they part of the rebel group we came to eliminate?" Vextalon asked. "Unknown, sir? They do not appear on our target list. Our intelligence reports made no mention of human presence on this world." Vextalon looked at the mission clock. They were already 2 hours behind schedule. The Hegemony Council expected results, not excuses. His military record was perfect, and he planned to keep it that way. "Sir," another officer spoke up from the communications station. "Should we contact the human settlement? Warn them to evacuate?" "How long would that take?" Vextalon asked. "At least 12 hours, sir. Maybe more. The humans will want to pack their belongings, gather their families. ... The commander's tail twitched with annoyance. Ow! 12 hours would put them far behind schedule. The other hegemony fleets were counting on this operation to finish on time. The rebels they came to destroy might escape to other worlds if they delayed. "Sir, there's something else," Ketmorin said, checking his tablet. "These humans have been here for 3 generations. They built these settlements from nothing, turned dead soil into farmland." Vextalon studied the tactical display again. The human settlements looked small and peaceful. He could see roads connecting the 3 towns, green fields surrounding them, and what looked like schools and hospitals. These were not warriors. They were farmers and families. But the mission was clear. The Hegemony Council wanted Kepler-4 to be cleared completely. No exceptions. "Sir, we could modify our bombardment pattern," suggested the weapons officer. "Strike around the human settlements, leave them unharmed, and risk missing our primary targets." Vextalon's voice was sharp. The rebels could hide among the humans, or escape during the confusion. He walked to the large window that showed the planet below. Somewhere down there, human children were probably playing in those green fields. Human families were sharing meals together. They had no idea that death was coming from the stars above, but Vextalon had his orders. The hegemony had rules about these situations. Military objectives came first. Everything else was secondary. 847 humans, he said quietly. Then he turned to face his crew. Acceptable losses. The bridge fell silent. Even among the Zephyrians, known for their cold military efficiency, this decision felt heavy. "Morin said carefully, "The humans are not our enemies." "They are in the way," Vextalon replied. "Begin bombardment, full spread. Leave nothing alive on the surface." Down on Kepler-4 to B, Captain Wu Jinho was loading grain supplies onto his cargo hauler when the sky began to burn. He was a trader who visited the colony every few months, bringing supplies from Earth and taking back the food they grew. The first energy blasts lit up the horizon like deadly lightning. Jinho dropped the supply crates and ran toward his ship. Behind him, he could hear people screaming as the bombardment began in earnest. His ship was old and slow, but it was already loaded and ready for takeoff. Jinho threw himself into the pilot's seat and fired the engines without waiting for proper warm-up procedures. The cargo hauler lifted off just as energy blasts began hitting the spaceport. Through his rear cameras, Jinho watched the human settlements disappear in bright flashes of light, The farms where children played, the schools where they learned, hospitals where they were born, all of it turning to ash and dust. His radio crackled with desperate voices, then went silent. Jin-Ho pushed. His ship's engines passed their safety limits, racing toward hyperspace. His hands shook as he set course for Earth. Behind him, 3 generations of human dreams died in minutes. The message burned in his mind like a brand. Asterisk. They killed everyone. Yes. They called it collateral damage. Asterisk. The Hegemony Council chambers stretched out like a vast cathedral made of crystal and metal. Ambassador Yoon Hairi walked down the long aisle toward the raised platform, where 12 alien counselors sat in their floating chairs. Her black diplomatic uniform felt small in this enormous space, designed to make visitors feel tiny and powerless. The counselors represented the most powerful species in the galaxy. The Zephyrian delegate, with his scaled purple skin and 4 arms, sat in the center. To his left was the insect-like Krelix representative, her compound eyes reflecting the chamber's blue lights. On the right sat the massive Gorvat counselor, whose rock-like skin made him look like a living mountain. Hairi had seen this room in diplomatic training videos. Being here in person was different. The air itself seemed to hum with power. These beings controlled thousands of worlds and trillions of lives across the galaxy. Ambassador Yoon Hairi of Earth, announced the chamber's artificial voice. You may speak. Hairi stopped at the speaking circle marked on the floor. She looked up at the counselors, who stared down at her with expressions ranging from boredom to mild curiosity. To them, she was just another petitioner from a minor world seeking justice for some small wrongdoing. Honored counselors, Hairi began, her voice carrying clearly in the vast space. 3 days ago, Commander Vextalin, of the Zephyrian fleet, ordered the bombardment of Kepler 4 to be. 847 human colonists were killed. The Zephyrian counselor Threxvalder shifted slightly in his floating chair. Ambassador, the Hegemony regrets any civilian casualties during necessary military operations. Standard compensation procedures. I am not here for compensation, Hairi interrupted. The chamber fell silent. Interrupting a counselor was a serious breach of protocol. I'm here with an ultimatum. Several counselors exchanged glances. The word ultimatum was rarely heard in these chambers, especially not from representatives of minor worlds. Commander, Vextalin and his entire command staff will surrender themselves to Earth for trial within 30 standard days. Hairi continued. They will face justice for war crimes against human civilians. The silence stretched for long seconds. Then Counselor Threxvalder began to laugh. It was a harsh, grating sound that echoed off the crystal walls. Soon, other counselors joined. Ambassador, said the Krelix delegate, her voice buzzing like angry insects. Perhaps you do not understand your species' position in galactic affairs. Humans number fewer than 50 billion across all your worlds. The Hegemony controls over 2 trillion sentient beings. Your military consists of perhaps 200 ships, added the Gorvat counselor, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. The Hegemony fleet numbers in the tens of thousands. You have been part of galactic civilization for only 3 centuries, Threxvalder said, his amusement clear. Most of our member species have been spacefaring for millennia. Hairi listened to their words without changing expression. She had expected this reaction. Earth's diplomatic corps had prepared her for exactly this kind of dismissal. Your terms are noted, she said calmly. Our terms? Threxvalder's yellow eyes narrowed. Ambassador, you mistake the situation. You are the one making demands. We do not negotiate with ultimatums from minor worlds. Then you decline to surrender. Commander Vextalin, Hairi asked. Obviously, said the Krelix delegate. The commander acted within established military protocols. Civilian casualties during combat operations are regrettable but unavoidable. The Hegemony offers standard reparations, Threxvalder added. Credits equivalent to the destroyed infrastructure, plus additional compensation for the deceased. This is far more generous than required by galactic law. Hairi nodded slowly. She had hoped, perhaps foolishly, that some of these beings might understand. That they might recognize the difference between acceptable losses in war and the murder of innocent families. Let me be very clear, she said, looking each counselor in the eye. You refuse to surrender Commander Vexstalin for trial? Correct, Threxvalder said firmly. This matter is closed. You refuse to acknowledge that the deliberate killing of unarmed civilians constitutes a war crime. We acknowledge that regrettable casualties occurred during a legitimate military operation, the Gorvat counselor rumbled, nothing more. It was quiet for a moment. Around the chamber, the counselors were already looking bored, ready to move on to the next item of business. To them, this was just another minor dispute from another insignificant world. Then you have made your choice, Hyrie said finally. Indeed we have, Threxvalder replied with satisfaction. This audience is concluded. Hyrie turned and began walking back down the long aisle toward the chamber doors. Her footsteps echoed in the vast space. Behind her, she could hear the counselors, already beginning to discuss the next matter on their agenda as she reached the doors. Hyrie stopped and turned back to face the raised platform. You think you know humanity because we are small and new to your galaxy? She called out. Her voice carried clearly across the chamber. You see our numbers and our ships and think you understand our strength. The counselors looked annoyed. At this further breach of protocol, you were wrong, Hyrie continued. And now you have chosen to learn who we really are. She walked through the doors, leaving the counselors to their laughter and dismissal. Behind her, she left humanity's last offer of mercy. The war had begun. The Hegemony Council chambers buzzed with satisfied conversation. 27 days had passed since the human ambassador's ridiculous ultimatum, and nothing had happened. Counselor Threxvalder sipped his morning nutrition fluid and reviewed the daily reports with pleasure. Trade routes operating at normal efficiency, his aide reported. Military deployments unchanged. No unusual activity from human worlds. Excellent, Threxvalder said. Seems the humans learned their place after all. Across the galaxy, other Hegemony officials shared the same satisfaction. The humans had made angry speeches, filed formal protests, and recalled their ambassadors. But that was all. No military movements. No economic sanctions. No real response at all. Typical human behavior, Admiral Brekthulin told his staff during their morning briefing. All talk, no action. They make noise for a few weeks, then go back to their farming and trading. On the military command ship, Eternal Dominance, Admiral Cathsorin felt less certain. He was older than most Hegemony commanders, with over 200 years of military experience. His gray scales bore scars from a dozen conflicts, and his 4 eyes had seen patterns that younger officers missed. Something felt wrong, but he could not explain what. The first problem appeared on day 28. A supply convoy heading to the Proxima military base reported engine trouble. 3 cargo ships dropped out of hyperspace and sent distress calls. Rescue vessels found them drifting with completely dead power systems. Solar flare activity, the investigating team reported. Random electromagnetic pulse. Bad luck. The same. Day communication relay station 447 went offline. The massive structure had provided hyperspace communication links for 17 star systems. Engineers found that its central computer had suffered a cascade failure. Old equipment, they said. These stations are due for replacement anyway. On day 29, a mining operation in the Kepler asteroid field reported that all their drilling equipment had stopped working. The machines showed no physical damage, but their control systems would not respond to commands. Computer virus, the technicians concluded. Probably picked up from illegal software downloads. Miners are always trying to install entertainment programs. Admiral Cathsorin read these reports with growing unease. Each incident seemed normal by itself. The galaxy was vast, and equipment failures happened every day. But something about the timing bothered him. On day 30, problems began appearing faster. A fuel depot on the edge of Zephyrian space lost pressure in all its storage tanks. Investigation showed that safety valves had somehow been programmed to open simultaneously. At the same time, a weapons manufacturing plant reported that its automated assembly lines were producing defective energy cells. Sabotage, some officers suggested. By whom? Their commanders asked. Our security is perfect. No unauthorized personnel have accessed these facilities. Admiral Kethsoren spread a star map across his command table and began marking each incident with a red dot. His aide, Captain Yexmorin, watched with confusion. "Sir, what are you looking for?" "Patterns," Kethsoren replied. His old eyes studied the map carefully. "Random failures should be truly random, but look at this." He drew lines connecting the red dots. The supply convoy failure had left the Proxima base without spare parts. The communication relay breakdown had cut off that same base from requesting emergency supplies from other sources. The mining operation provided the rare metals needed to repair the relay station. "They are connected," Kethsoren whispered. Over the next week, more incidents occurred. Each one seemed unrelated to the others. A navigation satellite network experienced simultaneous computer crashes, leaving military ships unable to plot accurate hyperspace jumps. A series of small accidents at different shipyards delayed the construction of new vessels. Food processing plants on 3 agricultural worlds reported contamination in their production lines. Admiral Kethsoren worked through each night, mapping the connections. The pattern became clearer with each new incident. Every failure served to weaken specific military installations, cut their supply lines, disrupt their communications, leave them isolated and vulnerable. "Sir," Captain Yexmorin said nervously, "this level of coordination would require incredible planning. Someone would need detailed knowledge of our entire infrastructure network." "Yes," Kethsoren agreed, "they would need to understand our technology better than we do ourselves. But who could manage such a thing? The rebels we have been fighting lack this sophistication. The other galactic powers have no reason to attack us." Admiral Kethsoren studied his map again. Red dots now covered hundreds of systems. The sabotage was happening everywhere at once, with perfect timing and complete knowledge of hegemony military vulnerabilities. "The humans," he said quietly. "Impossible, sir. They barely have a military. Their technology is centuries behind ours." Kethsoren was remembering something else. Humans had been part of galactic civilization for 3 centuries. They served on trade ships throughout hegemony space. They worked as technicians in military installations. They had access to databases and communication networks and manufacturing systems. All this time, the hegemony had seen them as harmless, too weak to matter, too primitive to pose a threat. "They have been learning," Kethsoren said with growing horror. "For 300 years, they have been watching, studying, preparing. The humans had not been idle during their time among the stars. They had been building something much more dangerous than weapons or fleets. They had been building understanding." Commander Vextalin stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the defense screens around Hegemony Naval Base Omega-7. This was the largest military installation in the galaxy, home to over 3,000 warships and 500,000 personnel. Its shields could stop planet-killing weapons. Its guns could destroy entire fleets. He felt safe here, confident. The humans had been playing their sabotage games for weeks, but this was different. This was real military power, concentrated in one unbreakable fortress. "Sir," his sensor officer called out, detecting hyperspace signatures. "Multiple contacts incoming." Vextalin moved to the tactical display. "How many ships? Counting now, sir?" "Approximately. 300 vessels." The commander almost laughed. 300 ships against his 3,000? The humans were finally showing their true weakness. They had run out of tricks and decided to throw their tiny fleet away in a hopeless attack. "Battle stations," he ordered calmly. "This will be over quickly." The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Vextalin studied their ships through his tactical screens. They were smaller than hegemony vessels, with simpler designs. Nothing impressive about their weapons or armor. "Sir, they are not moving into standard attack formation," the tactical officer reported with confusion. Vextalon frowned. Enemy fleets always formed battle lines, concentrated their strongest ships in the center, protected their weak points. Basic military, a strategy that every species followed. But the human ships were spreading out in what looked like chaos. Small groups of vessels moving in all directions. No clear command structure, no obvious plan. "Are they running away?" someone asked. Then the attack began. Lieutenant Sol Biora sat in the cockpit of her fighter, one of hundreds of small human ships scattered around the massive naval base. Through her neural interface, she could feel the presence of every other human pilot, every ship captain, every ground soldier preparing for the assault. They were not separate people making separate decisions. They were one mind with thousands of bodies. Phase 1. Execute. Came the command through the network. Not from any single leader, but from humanity itself. Bohr's fighter dove toward the base's outer defense ring, along with 49 other small craft. To the enemy, it must look like a suicide run. Tiny ships attacking massive gun platforms. But Biora knew something the enemy did not. Every human pilot could see through every other human's eyes. When fighter pilot Li Dongwu spotted a weakness in the shield grid, Biora instantly knew about it. When Captain Park Minesio's destroyer found the optimal firing angle, all nearby ships adjusted their positions automatically. The hegemony defenders fired their great guns, launching devastating energy beams that could vaporize any single ship. But the human fighters moved like a school of fish, flowing around the attacks with perfect coordination. Commander Vextalin watched in growing confusion as his outer defenses began failing. The human ships seemed to know exactly where each shot would be fired before his own gunners pulled the triggers. They moved as if they could read his mind. "Sir, the humans are using some kind of advanced AI system," his tactical officer suggested. "Their coordination is impossible otherwise." But Vextalin was beginning to understand something more disturbing. This was not artificial intelligence. This was actual intelligence, shared between thousands of minds. "Target their command ship," he ordered. "Cut off their communications." "Sir, we cannot identify a command ship. Their fleet has no clear hierarchy." "Then target the largest vessel." The base's main guns swiveled toward a human heavy cruiser and fired. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash. But the human fleet did not falter. If anything, their attacks became more intense. Lieutenant Biora felt the death of Captain Kim Jae-sung and his crew like a physical pain. But their sacrifice was not wasted. Through the network, every human fighter pilot now knew the exact firing pattern of the base's main guns. Phase 2, the collective mind decided. Human ships began attacking in waves, each group learning from the last. When Bora's squadron discovered that the shield generators had a 1-second vulnerability during power cycles, that information instantly reached every other attack group. When destroyer Captain Osu Jin found the optimal angle to penetrate the base's armor, every heavy ship adjusted its approach. The hegemony had built their military around the idea that each ship fought alone, with individual captains making independent decisions. Their technology was superior. Their weapons were more powerful. They could not adapt fast enough, Commander. Vextalin watched his mighty fortress crumble under the assault of vastly inferior ships. His 3,000 vessels should have crushed the humans easily. But every time his forces tried to coordinate a response, the humans had already moved to counter it. "How are they doing this?" he whispered. His aide, Captain Zeth Korin, looked pale. "Sir, I think they are not fighting as individuals." "What do you mean?" "Every human ship moves as if it knows what every other human ship is thinking. They share information instantly. They adapt together." Vextalin finally understood. While other species had spent centuries building better weapons and stronger armor, humans had built something else entirely. They had learned to fight as one organism. The hegemony's superior technology meant nothing against humanity's perfect unity. The courtroom on Earth was smaller than Commander Vextalin had expected. After months in the grand halls of hegemony power, this simple chamber with its wooden benches and plain walls seemed almost humble. But the weight of what was happening here felt heavier than all the crystal palaces he had ever known. Vextalin stood in the prisoner's dock, his forearms bound with energy restraints that hummed softly in the quiet room. His once-proud military uniform had been replaced with plain gray clothing. His scales, which had always gleamed with careful grooming, now looked dull and faded. Judge Han Gil-soo sat behind a simple wooden desk, wearing black robes that marked his position. He was an older human with gray hair and tired eyes. Vextalon had expected someone more impressive for such an important trial. But Gil-soo's quiet voice carried an authority that made the former commander listen carefully to every word. "Commander Vextalon," Gil-soo said, reading from the charges, "you stand accused of ordering the bombardment of civilian settlements on Kepler 44 to be, resulting in the deaths of 847 innocent people." Behind the judge, a large screen showed images from the destroyed colony. Green fields turned to ash, homes reduced to rubble, children's toys scattered among the ruins. Vextalon had seen these images before during the investigation. They still made something twist uncomfortably in his stomach. "How do you plead?" Vextalon remained silent for a long moment. 8 months ago, he had been one of the most powerful military commanders in the galaxy. The hegemony fleet had seemed unbeatable. Now, 40% of that fleet was destroyed or captured. Half of the hegemony's infrastructure lay in ruins. The great empire that had ruled the galaxy for centuries had surrendered to a species they had once dismissed as harmless. "I followed orders," he said finally. "That is not a plea," Gil-soo replied calmly. "Guilty or not guilty, the bombardment was a military necessity. The mission required ... guilty or not guilty," Gil-soo repeated. Vextalon looked around the courtroom. In the gallery, he could see human families. Some were survivors from other colonies that the hegemony had attacked over the years. Others were relatives of the soldiers who had died fighting his forces. They watched him with expressions he could not read. "Guilty," he said quietly. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Gil-soo waited for silence before continuing. "Commander, do you understand why you are here?" "Because we lost the war," Vextalon replied bitterly. "No," Gil-soo said. "You are here because you made a choice. You looked at 847 human lives and decided they were worth less than your schedule. Walk to the evidence display." He pressed a control, and the screen showed images of the Kepler colony before the attack. Children playing in schoolyards, families working in gardens, people living peaceful lives. Called them acceptable. "Losses," Gil-soo continued. "But you did not understand what you were really destroying. They were civilians caught in a military operation," Vextalon said. "These things happen in war, do they?" Gil-soo asked. He pressed another control. The screen now showed footage from the human counterattack, ships moving in perfect coordination, soldiers fighting with impossible unity. "Tell me, Commander, how many humans died in our war against you?" Vextalon frowned. He had reviewed the battle reports during his captivity. The numbers made no sense. Your casualties were impossibly low. 11,000 human military personnel died in 8 months of war, Gil-soo said. "Against your 3 million casualties. How do you explain this?" "Your technology. Our technology is inferior to yours. Our ships are smaller. Our weapons are weaker." Gil-soo walked back to his desk. "The difference was not in our tools, Commander. It was in our understanding." The judge sat down and looked directly at Vextalon. "Every human life is connected to every other human life," Gil-soo said quietly. "When you killed those 847 people on Kepler 44 to be, you did not just destroy individuals. You wounded our entire species. And when humanity is wounded, we respond as one." Vextalon thought about the battles he had fought, impossible coordination of human forces. The way they had seemed to share one mind across thousands of ships. "You see it now?" Gil-soo observed. "While your people fight as individuals seeking glory, humans fight as one organism protecting its family. That is why you lost." "What happens now?" Vextalon asked. "You will spend the rest of your life in prison," Gil-soo said. "Your fleet has been disbanded. The Hegemony Council has agreed to new laws governing military conduct and humanity. ... The judge paused, looking tired. "Humanity will do what we must. The galaxy has shown us that someone needs to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Not because we want power, but because it is right. As guards led Vextalin away, he heard Gilsu's final words echoing in the chamber. You taught us that some things are unforgivable. We will make sure the galaxy never forgets that lesson. Age of casual brutality was over. Humanity's watch had begun.